In the quiet village of Mgwen, where family bonds were once stronger than steel, a dark seed of greed began to grow. A sister's heart, poisoned by jealousy. A brother's trust, shattered by betrayal. And an inheritance drenched in silent war. This is not just a story of land and legacy, it is a tale of poison, survival, and the painful path to forgiveness. When blood turns against blood, what remains? Gold or grace? Welcome to Blood Over Gold, the betrayal of Sister Mbezi, a story that will grip your soul and stir your spirit. The sun had barely risen over the village of Mgwen when the mourners began to leave. The home of the late Chief Baraka and his wife, Mama Tile, now stood eerily silent. Only their two surviving children remained, Mbezi, the elder daughter, and Kamal, the soft-spoken son. They sat apart in the dusty courtyard, not speaking, only the crackling fire between them held the space. Mbezi's heart was not heavy with grief like Kamal's. Instead, her mind danced with figures, land deeds, and the thought of the sprawling farm their parents left behind. Their will had not been read yet, but she already feared one thing, sharing. Kamal, who was always favored by their parents for his humility and honesty, would inherit just as much. That, to her, was unacceptable. As Kamal fed the fire one more dry stick, he glanced at his sister and said, "We must honor their memory by staying united." Mbezi smiled faintly, but inside her thoughts turned cold. She had no intention of sharing her destiny with anyone, not even her own blood. A week after the burial, the village elders gathered at the family compound to read the will of Chief Baraka. Everyone expected Mbezi to receive the lion's share as the eldest, but that assumption shattered like glass when the will was finally revealed. Chief Baraka had left the land equally to both his children, half to Mbezi, and half to Kamal. Gasps spread across the room, but none louder than the silence that followed. Mbezi's jaw clenched, and Kamal could feel the bitterness radiating from her. The elders, unaware of the storm stirring in Mbezi's heart, praised Chief Baraka's fairness. That night, Mbezi sat alone under the baobab tree, her fingers digging into the soil. "Why should I share what I suffered to preserve?" she whispered to herself. "Kamal doesn't know how to manage land. He doesn't deserve it." In that moment, envy became a seed, and it began to grow. Kamal didn't care much for wealth. To him, land meant food and peace. He planned to use his share to grow maize, keep a few goats, and maybe open a small nursery school for the children of Mgwen. He told Mbezi this over breakfast, hoping it would warm her heart. But Mbezi only nodded, her smile tight. Inside, she fumed. Even with nothing, he dreams, she thought bitterly. He'll only grow more beloved. And that love could turn into influence, then power. She began to believe that unless Kamal disappeared, she would forever live in his shadow. And so, what started as envy twisted itself into something darker, something unforgivable. One moonless night, a cloaked figure visited Mbezi. It was a man named Goro, once a cattle thief, now turned rogue herbalist with a reputation for making people disappear. She had heard of him through whispers and summoned him through a trusted servant. By the dim glow of an oil lamp, Mbezi offered him money, livestock, and the promise of more land if he could solve a problem for her. Goro listened without flinching. "Your brother?" he asked. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her silence was its own confirmation. Goro smiled and gave a small nod. "Then it shall be done." The plan was simple. Kamal drank palm wine every evening, always from the same calabash near the kitchen fire. Goro handed Mbezi a powder, white, odorless, deadly. "It will look like sleep," he said. That evening, Mbezi ground the powder with trembling hands. Her heart pounded, but she told herself it was necessary. He has no wife. No children. No one will question it, she reasoned. Kamal came in, tired and smiling. "Sister, will you drink with me tonight?" he asked. Mbezi paused, but only for a second, then poured the wine, careful to give herself from a separate god. She watched him raise the cup to his lips and drink. Kamal sipped slowly, savoring the flavor as always. For a moment, Mbezi held her breath, expecting him to cough, choke, or slump. But he didn't. He merely chuckled and said, "I think this batch is sweeter than usual." Panic gripped Mbezi. Could Goro have given her the wrong mixture? Or was her brother more resilient than expected? She forced a laugh and excused herself, claiming fatigue. In truth, she was rattled, something had gone wrong. The next morning, Kamal was up before dawn, feeding the goats and singing an old lullaby their mother used to hum. Mbezi stared at him from the doorway, both relieved and furious. "Next time," she whispered, "I'll make sure." 2 days later, Mbezi sent Kamal on an errand to the hills to collect a rare herb their mother once used for medicine. She knew the path well, narrow, shaded, and home to vipers. She tipped off Goro to wait near the path with a bag of snakes, trained to be aggressive when released. Kamal left with a spring in his step, waving at children as he walked. Goro waited as planned, releasing the sack just as Kamal approached a bend. But fate intervened. A group of schoolchildren ran ahead of Kamal on the path. Hearing their laughter, Goro panicked and aborted the plan. Kamal saw only a rustle in the grass and a fleeting shadow. Something didn't feel right. That evening, Kamal returned safe but disturbed. "I feel watched," he told Mbezi. "Twice this week I've escaped strange dangers." He didn't accuse her, but his eyes held questions. Mbezi dismissed his concerns with a laugh, but inwardly she cursed Goro's failure. 2 chances. 2 failures. Goro warned her, "The land hears, and the wind carries secrets. If we're not careful, you will be the hunted, not the hunter." But Mbezi was too far gone. "He is weak," she said. "And he trusts too much. He won't suspect a thing." A house servant named Naoka had served the family since childhood. He noticed the strange visits from Goro and the whispered conversations in the kitchen. He also saw how Mbezi no longer looked Kamal in the eyes. Naoka, loyal to both siblings, began quietly following Mbezi's movements. One night, he saw her mixing something into Kamal's porridge but switching the bowl when Kamal arrived late. He didn't speak of it yet, but he wrote a letter and hid it beneath the floorboards of Kamal's hut, beginning with the words, "If anything happens to you, know that it was no accident." Kamal began to have troubling dreams, visions of fire, whispers in the dark, and a hand reaching for his throat. He sought counsel from the village elder, Mzee Bakery. The old man listened quietly, then gave Kamal a warning, "Even the tree that shades you may shelter snakes. Trust not the familiar blindly." Kamal returned home in silence, his trust in his sister cracking. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, he watched her serve his dinner, and for the first time, he didn't eat. He knew something dark was brewing, and he would soon need to act. The night was heavy with silence. Kamal waited until the household had gone to sleep, then quietly packed a small bag with only essentials. He took Naoka's warning seriously and didn't want to confront his sister until he knew the truth. Before leaving, he knelt beside their parents' graves and whispered, "Forgive me. I must protect what you left behind." He disappeared into the forest, heading to a neighboring village where no one knew him. By sunrise, Mbezi knocked on his door with another poisoned breakfast, but when she entered, the room was empty. The bed was undisturbed. Kamal had vanished. Mbezi was furious. Kamal's disappearance complicated everything. "He must have suspected something," she hissed. Goro advised her to remain calm. "He'll return. Fear always brings them back." But days passed. Then a week. And Kamal remained missing. Mbezi pretended to the villagers that her brother had gone to survey land. "He's always been a wanderer," she smiled. But her nerves told a different story. Meanwhile, She searched for Kamal using local scouts, offering small bribes for any information. None returned with news. It was as if Kamal had vanished into the wind. Kamal arrived at the village of Mavoli, tired and thin. An old friend of his father's, Pastor Wafula, welcomed him with open arms. Kamal told him everything, his suspicions, Naoka's warning, and the attempts on his life. The pastor listened in silence, then said, "You are not safe at home. But God sees all. The truth will come like dawn, it cannot be hidden." Kamal offered to work on the church farm in exchange for food and shelter. He chose not to live in fear, but in preparation. One day, he would return, but not as a victim. Back in Mgwen, Mbezi continued pretending. She told the elders that Kamal had agreed to give up his portion of the land. "He left everything to me. He said he was not interested in farming." Some believed her, others did not. Naoka, now fully convinced of her treachery, kept quiet but began documenting everything he saw and heard. Meanwhile, Mbezi started selling off parts of the family land to wealthy developers. Her greed knew no bounds. She saw herself not just as the owner, but the queen of the entire village. Naoka struggled with his conscience. Should he go to the elders? The police? Or stay silent and protect himself? The risk was great, but so was the injustice. He decided to send a secret letter to Kamal, addressed to Pastor Wafula, hoping it would find its way to him. In the letter, he detailed all of Mbezi's lies, land sales, and continued plots. He ended the letter with one line: "The land remembers your footsteps. Come back. But come carefully." 2 weeks later, the letter reached Mavili. Kamal read it under the moonlight with trembling hands. Anger surged within him, not just at Mbezi, but at himself for staying silent. He turned to Pastor Wafula and said, "It's time. She must be exposed." The pastor warned him, "Return with truth and protection. Your sister won't stop until she's unmasked." Kamal wrote to the district office, enclosing Naoka's evidence. Then, with the pastor's help, he arranged a quiet return to Mgwen, this time, with the law on his side. A government inspector arrived at Mbezi's compound under the guise of surveying land development. Mbezi welcomed him with charm and cooked him a large meal. "My brother left me everything," she said sweetly. "No disputes here." But the inspector wasn't fooled. He'd read the documents Kamal had sent. He asked to see original titles, and Mbezi fumbled. "Oh, I misplaced them." He nodded, pretending to believe her. Then he met secretly with Naoka, who confirmed everything. The trap was slowly tightening. Kamal returned quietly under the cover of night. He met with the inspector, who agreed to summon the village elders for a formal inquiry. The next morning, Mbezi was stunned to see Kamal standing in the village square, alive and healthy. Her smile faltered. "Brother," she said cautiously. "You've returned." "I never left," he replied calmly. "Only washed. And now, the truth is ready to speak." The crowd murmured. A storm was about to break. The elders gathered beneath the ancient tree where justice was always served. The inspector laid out the findings: forged documents, illegal land sales, and recorded attempts on Kamal's life. Mbezi denied everything. "My brother lies. He abandoned us. He wants sympathy." But Naoka stepped forward, holding the original letters and poison packet he had secretly saved. "I served this family since I was a boy," Naoka said. "And I will not serve lies." His testimony shattered the final veil over Mbezi's deception. With overwhelming evidence, the inspector stood and declared, "Mbezi Baraka, by order of the district court, you are under arrest for attempted murder, fraud, and illegal possession of ancestral property." Gasps erupted. Mbezi screamed, "You can't do this. I am the firstborn. That land is mine." 2 officers took her away as she wailed, cursing Kamal. But he stood silent, tears in his eyes, not of triumph, but of sorrow. He never wanted his sister jailed, only the truth restored. And now, justice had spoken. Mbesi's arrest sent shockwaves through Mgwen. Some villagers wept for her, remembering her as the hardworking daughter of Chief Baroka. Others whispered, "We always knew she was too hungry for power." Fences that once divided land now divided loyalties. Kamal walked through the village with lowered eyes. Though he was vindicated, he felt no joy. He knew this would leave a scar, not just in the family, but in the soul of the community. Pastor Wafula returned to offer him strength. Sometimes peace only comes after the storm. But you, Kamal, must now be a builder of trust and of home. The district office granted Kamal full control over the remaining ancestral land while the court case against Mbesi proceeded. Half of the land had already been sold, but the other half, his rightful share, remained intact. Kamal refused to sell. Instead, he began planting again. Maize, cassava, beans. He hired villagers, especially the youth, to work with him. "Let this land feed more than just my body," he said. "Let it feed the future." With every seed planted, Kamal healed. With every harvest that followed, he honored the memory of his parents, not in words, but in actions. In her cell at the county jail, Mbesi was unrecognizable. The proud woman now sat in silence, her fine clothes replaced by grey cotton, her meals plain and tasteless. She refused to speak to anyone, especially her lawyers. But solitude forced her to confront her past. She remembered Kamal's kindness, his loyalty, the days they played as children by the river. Guilt crept in like a shadow, refusing to be shut out. Still, her pride kept her from crying. "I wanted power, and now I have walls," she whispered bitterly to herself. Court day arrived. Kamal sat in the witness stand, clear and composed. "I never wanted my sister punished," he said. "Only the truth revealed. Only peace restored." Nayoka testified next. His account of the poison wine and the snake trap gripped the court. Goro, arrested shortly after Mbesi, confirmed it all in exchange for a lighter sentence. When it was Mbesi's turn to speak, she remained silent for a long moment. Then finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "I was wrong." The judge's ruling echoed across the courtroom. "Mbesi Baroka, you are hereby sentenced to 10 years in prison for attempted murder and land fraud, with eligibility for parole after 6 years based on conduct." There was no applause, no celebration, only silence. Justice had come, but at great cost. As Mbesi was led away, she turned back one last time. Her eyes met Kamal's. For the first time in years, there was no hate in them, only deep, aching regret. Kamal returned home to a compound overgrown with weeds and silence. But he began cleaning slowly, repainting walls, fixing broken gates, planting flowers Mama Taya once loved. He invited Nayoka to return permanently. "This place was never mine alone. You are family too," Kamal said. Villagers, once skeptical, began stopping by with gifts, food, and labor. Slowly, the home of Chief Baroka was reborn, not as a fortress of greed, but as a sanctuary of healing. Months into her sentence, Mbesi began writing letters. At first, she wrote to no one. Just empty pages filled with remorse and questions. Then, one day, she addressed a letter to Kamal. "I don't ask for forgiveness yet. I ask only that you know. I was scared. Of being alone. Of being forgotten. I confused inheritance with love." Kamal read the letter with tears in his eyes. He didn't reply immediately. He needed time, but he folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer, not the fire. Kamal started a youth farm co-op, training young people in sustainable farming and business skills. The project attracted attention across counties, and soon, government support followed. He named the project Baroka Harvest, after their father. When asked why, he said, because from a cursed season, something good can still grow. In Mbesi's absence, Kamal chose grace over revenge. He did not erase her from history, her name still stood on the gate of the house they grew up in. We are all flawed, he told a journalist. But not all of us are beyond change. One morning, a small boy appeared at Kamal's gate holding a letter. Are you Uncle Kamal? The child asked. My mommy said to give you this. Inside was a crayon drawing of a tree and two children playing. It was from Mbesi, sent through a fellow inmate who'd just been released. On the back were 5 words. I remember when we laughed. Kamal closed his eyes and whispered, so do I. A year passed. Kamal visited the prison unannounced. When Mbesi saw him, she stood in shock. Neither spoke for a moment. Then Kamal stepped forward and handed her a small bouquet of wildflowers. I don't come with judgment, he said. I come with hope. If one day you leave here, your place is still your place. Mbesi broke down in tears. That day, the prison walls did not feel as high. And for the first time in years, Mbesi believed she might someday be free, inside and out. Kamal returned from the prison with a heavy heart, but also with hope. That evening, he walked to the spot near the river where he and Mbesi once planted a mango tree as children. It had long died, choked by weeds and time. He took a young mango seedling and planted a new tree beside the old roots. As he pressed soil around it, he whispered, this one is for healing. Word spread, and the youth from Baraka Harvest joined him. Together, they turned the old riverbank into a memorial garden, a tribute to lost time, family, and forgiveness. In prison, Mbesi began attending reading and counseling sessions. At first, she was guarded, but over time, she started sharing her story. Others listened with tears, some nodding in silent recognition. She began mentoring younger inmates, many of whom had also made selfish choices that destroyed their families. Regret is heavy, she told them. But it can become a foundation for change. Her transformation didn't erase her past, but it softened her future. Even the guards started calling her Mama Mbesi. Mbesi continued writing letters, not only to Kamal, but to old friends, former neighbors, even the elders. She admitted her guilt, expressed remorse, and asked for nothing but understanding. Some letters were never answered. But a few were. We all fall, one reply read. What matters is how we rise. Kamal, now a local figure of peace and wisdom, read each letter she sent. He didn't always know what to say in return, but he never stopped reading them. Kamal's project flourished. He expanded the farm, added a fish pond, a beekeeping unit, and even a small library built with donations. Young people from across the county came to learn. Kamal never used his story as a trophy. Instead, he quietly used his pain to teach. Greed divides, but purpose multiplies, he often said. One day, a government official visited the farm and announced plans to replicate the model in other regions. Kamal smiled humbly. Let it grow, he said. Let good things spread. 2 years into Mbesi's sentence, her lawyers filed for parole based on good conduct and her contribution to the rehabilitation of other inmates. The parole board scheduled a review. Kamal received a letter asking him to appear as a witness. For a long time, he stared at the request, unsure what to say. But after a long walk by the river, he decided. He would go, not for vengeance, not even to defend, but to speak the truth as he saw it now. At the parole hearing, Kamal stood in front of the panel. Yes, she tried to harm me, he began. But I also believe she has changed. Not because she said so, but because she has shown it. He paused, looking at Mbesi who sat quietly behind bars, hands folded, eyes lowered. I am not the same man I was then. I don't need her behind bars to feel safe. I only pray she never forgets the pain we caused each other. The board took notes. The room was silent. Mbezi shed quiet tears of gratitude and shame. 3 weeks later, the parole board approved Mbezi's early release under strict conditions. She would return home, but remain under supervision and attend weekly counseling sessions. The prison gates opened for her on a rainy Thursday. Kamal waited beneath an umbrella. Mbezi stepped out in plain clothes, holding only a warm bag and a folded letter. She didn't speak at first. Neither did Kamal. They walked together in silence. The rain washed the dust from the road, and with it, the weight of years began to lift. Returning to the village wasn't easy. Some still whispered. Some turned away. But Kamal stood by her side, introducing her to the farm workers and community. He didn't force acceptance. He simply reminded everyone, we all have chapters we wish we could erase. But we can't rewrite the past, we can only write what comes next. Slowly, the village softened. Some greeted her. A few even smiled. It would take time. But it had begun. Mbezi joined Baraka Harvest and offered to help manage the new nursery unit. She spent her days with children, teaching them how to plant, read, and share. She also started a group for widowed or imprisoned women, helping them write letters to reconnect with their families. Kamal watched her work, not with suspicion, but with quiet pride. She wasn't the woman who once plotted in shadows. She was trying. Truly trying. One evening, Kamal and Mbezi sat under the mango tree by the river. The new tree they planted years ago now bore fruit. They shared slices, they taste sweet and earthy. Do you think Mama and Baba would be proud? Mbezi asked. Kamal nodded. Not because we never failed, but because we never stopped rising. The river flowed beside them, gentle and endless. And for the first time since their parents' passing, laughter, a true, unburdened laughter, filled the air between them. One afternoon, an old friend of their father arrived at the Baraka homestead. Mzi Onditai, now grey and bent, smiled when he saw Kamal and Mbezi together. Your father would rest easier now, he said. He toured the farm, marveled at the growth, and blessed the mango tree near the river. You turned ashes into gardens, he told Kamal. But what matters most is that you turn enemies into family. His words left a deep impression on both siblings. Healing was still ongoing, but now, it had roots. Inspired by Mzi Onditai's words, Kamal proposed a Day of Reconciliation in Mgwen, a village festival where families could share stories of forgiveness, resilience, and rebirth. Some villagers hesitated, but Kamal and Mbezi led by example. They publicly shared their story, pain and all, and how forgiveness saved them both. Tears were shed. Old rivalries melted. And when night fell, drums echoed through the hills, not in mourning, but in celebration. Weeks later, Mbezi received a letter from the Ministry of Culture. Her work with ex-convict women had reached national attention. They wanted to fund her to build a small women's center in Mgwen. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't deserve this, she said. But Kamal disagreed. It's not about what you deserve. It's about what you've become. The Women's Center was named Momatile House, in memory of their mother, the woman who taught them love, even when they forgot it. Under Mbezi's leadership, the Women's Center began offering skill-building programs, tailoring, soap making, reading classes. Widows, single mothers, and ex-prisoners came from all over. Kamal donated a portion of his land to expand the center, building dormitories for those traveling from afar. It was no longer just about the Baraka family, it was about a generation of healing. Mgwen, once divided by whispers, became known across the county as the village that forgave. One day, while Mbezi was teaching sewing at the center, a widowed primary school teacher named Baraka, a quiet, respectful man, asked to speak with her. He brought flowers, not to impress, but to honor. I know your past, he said gently. And it does not scare me. What scares me is not trying to build something with someone who has come so far. Mbezi was stunned. She laughed nervously, then cried. For once, love didn't feel like a prize or a trap. It felt like peace. Months later, Mbezi and Baraka married in a simple ceremony under the mango tree by the river. Only close friends, children from the center, and a few elders attended. Kamal stood beside her, placing his hand on her shoulder just before she said her vows. No more secrets, he whispered. As they exchanged rings, birds sang from the branches above. The tree that had once marked division now stood as a symbol of renewal. Kamal, too, found love. A young agriculturalist from the ministry named Akin had been helping with Baraka harvest. Their bond grew slowly, grounded in long walks, shared plans, and quiet laughter. He proposed not with a ring, but with a question: would you like to plant with me, for life? Akin smiled. Only if we plant trees that our children will one day rest under. Their union reminded Kamal that love, like land, needed patience and the right season. That year, Kamal and Mbezi built a shrine beside their parents' graves. It was simple, just stone, flowers, and an engraved quote. In the shadow of pain, we found light. The whole village came to honor Chief Baraka and Mometaya. Elders spoke. Children danced. The mango tree stood tall, its fruit sweeter than ever. Kamal whispered, we are no longer living in their memory. We are now living in their example. One evening, a group of children gathered around Mbezi and Kamal under the tree. Tell us your story, they pleaded. Mbezi smiled. It's not a story about villains and heroes. It's a story about two siblings who lost their way and found each other again. She shared everything: the betrayal, the pain, the prison, and the peace. The children listened wide-eyed, learning not to judge others by their mistakes, but by what they do after them. Years passed. Kamal and Mbezi's children played together in the same fields they once walked as enemies. The homestead was filled with laughter, crops, and harmony. Mbezi often sat beneath the mango tree in the evenings, watching the sunset. I tried to trade blood for gold, she once whispered to Kamal. But in the end, grace was the true inheritance. Kamal smiled and added, and now we pass it on, not just to our children, but to our people. And so, the story of betrayal became a legend of redemption, whispered in lullabies, taught in classrooms, and etched in the heart of Mgwen.